bit earlier than we thought, and Eric wasn't even at the computer, so we're not sure how the show started. But we are all prepared, so I'm going to get us going. For many of you, you know me. This is Kelly Munn. I'm with the League of Education Voters, and I typically moderate these webinars. I want to welcome you again to our online webinar series, and we call them lunchtime webinars. We started this series close to 4 years ago in order to share information and build knowledge on important and timely issues. We have built these webinars around the needs of our listeners, so if you have any suggested webinars, we'd love to hear it. We are pleased to offer these webinars because of the generous support of our sponsor, the Boeing Company. Today we will hear from Dr. Munn, Assistant Professor in the University of Washington College of Education, who will share her recent study on Black teachers' retention and transfer patterns in North Carolina, and how these patterns vary by teacher effectiveness, subjects, and school conditions. Dr. Sun will also discuss policy strategies for retaining and supporting effective Black teachers. Dr. Munn specializes in using quantitative methods to understand the ways in which federal, state, and district policies affect teaching and learning outcomes. Her interests include educator workforce development, school accountability, and school improvement. Dr. Sun is joined by the UW College of Ed Associate Dean for Research, Dr. Deborah McCutchen, who can provide additional perspectives on how research can inform advocacy, should the discussion go in that direction. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. Many of you know these, but for those of us who haven't joined us before, you'll notice a chat function on the right side of your screen. This is a space for you to type questions to us. As always, feel free to send any feedback about the quality of this webinar to us on the chat function, or send it to us at info@educationvoters.org. At this point, I'd like to welcome Dr. Munn and Dr. McCutchen.
Thank you for having us. This is Deborah McCutchen. I just wanted to begin with a word about the University of Washington College of Education. As a college of education within a public university, we work to transform inequities in educational systems where we see them through our collaborative partnerships, practices, and research. And with our emphasis on partnerships, then, we intend to work with and not on educational systems or communities, and thereby build hardwired connections to advocacy and policy implications through our work. Dr. Munn's work is an example of this, and I'll now turn the floor over to her.
Thank you so much to Deb and Kelly for the introduction. And good afternoon, this is Munn from UW. And thank you so much for joining us today in this webinar. I'm really pleased to share with you all about my recent work of Black teachers' retention and transfer patterns from one particular state, North Carolina. And I'm also going to discuss how these patterns vary by teacher effectiveness, subjects, and their school working conditions. This work is supported by a grant from National Science Foundation. We are extremely grateful for this support. Now I'm getting to the slide with the title Motivation. Recently, growing public interest and government action towards diversifying teaching workforce, in my opinion, situated in three contexts. The first context is the students' population is becoming increasingly diverse, whereas the teaching population have not been able to keep up with the same pace. Let me share with you a couple of examples. According to the U.S. Department of Education, in 2013, 50% of our students' population are students of color, whereas there were only 18% of teachers of color. the students of color is projected by the U.S. Department of Education to grow to about 54% in public K-12 schools in 2025. In the state of Washington, according to the OSPI 2015 data, 38 to 45% of students' population in public schools in Washington state is students of color, whereas only about 8 to 10% of teaching workforce are teachers of color. This really raises the question of underrepresentation of the teachers of color in the teaching workforce. The second context I'd like to share is more and more rigorous studies show that the benefit of a diverse teaching workforce on students' learning outcome is both short run and long run. So researchers have indicated that teachers of color have a higher expectation on students of color, and which lead to better behavioral and achievement outcomes, and also, more importantly, long run, higher likelihood to graduate from high school. This benefit also extends beyond the students of color themselves, but also to all students. So the third context I'd like to share is why do we need to discuss diversifying teaching workforce, why this is an important topic, is that there are much discussions on the importance of teachers of color in terms of benefit for students. However, we really know very little about their labor market patterns. And although we know a fair amount about the teacher labor market in general, however, we just don't know a lot of specifics of this particular segment of the teacher labor market. And so the question I'm trying to address through this study is, do our general knowledge about the teaching workforce in general apply to this particular segment of teacher labor market? And in my study, I particularly focused on Black and African American teachers. Because of the study site in North Carolina, this is the largest subgroup of teachers of color, and also have the lowest retention rate, which is consistent with the national pattern as well. And I'm not including other racial ethnic subgroups here because different subgroups of teachers actually show different teacher labor market patterns. Therefore, I'm sort of zoom in and focus on Black teachers in this particular study. So I asked, what were the trends and patterns of Black teachers' retention in comparison to that of their white counterparts? And how did these patterns and trends vary depends on teachers' effectiveness and subjects? And which school supports particular leadership, mentoring, and professional development? Those are factors malleable to policy interventions as well as school practices were associated with a higher Black teachers retention, particularly effective Black teachers. And when they leave, where did they, who leave and where did they move? So now I'm on the slide of data and sample. So to answer those questions, I used more than a decade of teacher turnover data from NC elementary and middle schools from 2004 to 2015. Again, I narrowed the sample size to elementary and middle schools because at different educational level, teachers actually have different turnover and retention patterns. Just to make this project manageable, therefore, I'm focused on elementary and middle schools in particular. The data include Black and white teachers whose primary responsibility were as full-time teachers based on the state salary data. And on average, although there are variations across districts and schools, there were about 13% were Black in the teaching workforce, and about on average 79% were white. Among this total of 61,000 to 69,000 teachers per year in my sample, with this proportion translates into number equivalent to about 7,000 to 9,000 Black teachers in a given year. In a subset of analysis, I include a subsample of teachers with effectiveness measures captured by either their value-added scores or observational ratings which I'm going to talk shortly about what they are, since 2013. In this subsample, we have about, in total, about 11 to 18,000 teachers, and 13% of them were Black, 81 were white, very equivalent to the racial composition in the larger population. Now I'm on the slide of measures, there are two measures I used to indicate teacher effectiveness, and those measures were from state 6 professional teaching standards since 2011, and they are teachers' official evaluation scores in the state. I use the teacher evaluation scores, these official sort of scores, rather than my own calculated value-added scores, because these are the primary indicator of teacher effectiveness available in the teacher labor market, in both to the supply side in terms of teachers and also to the demand side of students and schools. I aggregate the first 5 standards scored to observational rating scores because they obtained primary through principal's rating or a person designated by the principal. So those 5 standard scores include teachers demonstrate leadership, teachers establish a respectful environment for a diverse population of students, and teachers know the content they teach, teachers facilitate learning for their students, and teachers reflect on their practices. So I developed a composite score, and you will see later on observational rating scores, which indicate the composite score of these 5 professional teaching standards. And the second set of measures is teachers' value-added or EVALS scores in that state. And the teachers' value-added scores is a measure to capture teachers' contribution to academic success of the students. There are different sort of value-added scores calculated by the state for the teachers, even for a given teacher, depends on the responsibility of the teacher. So for this particular analysis, I'm focused on the EVALS scores based on the end of grade state test 3 to 8 grade level in math, reading, and science. I know many of you probably very familiar with value-added, just sort of for some of you who this may be one of the first or second time you heard about this term. The value-added scores in North Carolina essentially capture the degree to which a teacher is higher or lower performing in comparison to other teachers who taught students with similar prior test scores. So now I'm on the other slide with the measures, and it's teaching work condition, which is another set of measure we developed to capture the type of support different teachers receive in their schools. And this is a set of measures developed from the NC State administered teacher working condition surveys. They give to the staff members every 2 years, and we are using data from 2004 to 2014. So based on the survey responses, I developed 3 measures. The first measure is principal leadership, as captured by some survey questions such as the principal consistent support teachers and principal address teachers' concern about facilities, resources, PD, etc. The second measure is mentoring effectiveness, as captured by mentoring effectiveness in instructional strategies, curriculum and subject content, classroom management, etc. The last composite measures to capture school support is professional development. These measures capture teachers' response or rating on do they have sufficient funds and resources to allow them to take advantage of PD activities, and whether this PD activity provide teachers with knowledge and skill most needed to teach effectively. So diving into some of the results, today I'd like to share 4 observations or takeaways from the analysis. The first one, or the first takeaway, is Black teachers had consistently low retention rate than white counterpart, even after I account for teachers' other characteristics, their working condition, their schools and their districts, etc. As you see in this graph, the dark line indicate elementary schools, while the lighter line indicate middle school teachers. So elementary school teachers on average have really higher retention rate than middle school teachers. Moreover, when you look at within each education level, the solid line indicate Black teachers and the dashed line indicate white teachers. So white teachers have a higher retention rate than Black teachers in both elementary and middle school respectively. There are fluctuations over time, as you see, as indicated on the x-axis here. But on average, the retention gap between Black and white teachers was about 3.6%. The takeaway message number 2 is Black teachers' retention and transfer patterns parallel many of white teachers in multiple aspects. For example, we just saw elementary school Black teachers have a higher retention rate than middle school counterparts as well. And for both Black and white teachers, they are more likely to stay in schools with better support, as captured by principal leadership, PD, mentoring effectiveness. And effective teachers are more likely to stay. And when those teachers move, Black teachers like white teachers, they move to schools that served more advantaged students, as captured by fewer number of minority and higher economic status, etc. And there are more, more effective teachers also moved to even better schools. However, takeaway message number 3 does show that Black teachers' retention and transfer patterns have some distinctive features. As you see, we observe that Black teachers are more likely to stay in schools serving higher proportion of Black students and more likely to switch to another school serving higher proportion of Black students than white teachers. Given after I account for teachers' characteristics and their own effectiveness measures, their prior schools working condition. In other words, like for similar type of teachers in other, like in terms of gender, other type of characteristic, effectiveness, and where they used to work, and Black teachers more likely to switch to another school serving high proportion of Black students. As you see in the next slide, the graph, that on the x-axis, you see the proportion of Black students in the school. When the proportion of Black students in the school reach and above 40%, the Black teachers' retention rate is significantly higher than white teachers. Now I'm on slide takeaway number 3 again. So how do we understand what we saw? And from a labor economic term, we can sort of indicate that data really show a job matching thing. But there are multiple mechanisms under this explanation of job matching. These mechanisms may include a drawn to home, which is discussed in prior literature. Teachers like to work very close to their hometown, which apply to both Black and white teachers. However, it seems like a stronger applied to Black teachers. And the second mechanism here could be in place is mission-driven for teachers of color. In prior studies, folks have conducted survey, and Black teachers are more likely to report that serving the community and help students with a similar background are their key reasons for them to join teaching profession and for them to stay. The third mechanism that I can think of could be about quality matching. maybe Black teachers are more effective in this type of schools, therefore they are more likely to join and stay in this type of schools. And also from the demand set in terms of like the district and schools, they are who serve this type of a high proportion of students of color, they may be more likely to recruit and retain a diverse teaching workforce as well. In this study, I cannot separate it due to the mechanism of join to home or mission driven or quality matching. However, I do see the pattern we see in terms of the job matching give us a significant policy implication, which I will discuss shortly. Now, the takeaway message number 4, the retention of effective Black teachers in math is a subject area often facing teacher shortage, not only in North Carolina, but nationwide. And this type of teachers is more responsive to strong school leadership, mentoring, and professional development. So now I'm on slide policy implications. What do we learn from this 4 takeaway message or observation from the data? The first policy implications I'd like to share today is many effective strategies of retaining teachers, like the things we learned apply to all teachers or in general, can be equally effective for Black teachers. Why? Because we just saw Black teachers share many similar patterns as white teachers, in particular better support from school leadership, mentoring support, and effective PD are very important to them, particularly for effective Black math teachers. The second policy implication is, although there are some shared strategy, but we also observe some distinctive patterns for this group of teachers. Therefore, there might be some distinctive strategies that we can learn as well. The first is, if the join to home is the key reason, then local recruitment support, for example, partnership between Black community and nearby university and college could be a very fruitful policy strategy. If mission-driven is the key reason, then let's call on their commitment to serve. This can be a really low-cost intervention. For example, offer those effective teachers of color with leadership roles and make them visible in the community and let them see that their impact is go above and beyond their own classrooms. If quality matching is the key reason, then I'd like to invite us to think deeply and also creatively in terms of how to strategically staffing teaching workforce. And I know in Washington, we have been discussing about teacher shortage issues. And through my research, I would think that this is not the issue of providing effective teachers for all students is quite complicated. It's not a simple number issue. Rather, we really need to think and discuss about what type of teachers we need, how to strategically recruit them, place them, develop them, and retain them. This can be very fruitful discussions. Thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to take questions if there is any.
Thank you, Dr. Munn. We have about 10 minutes for questions. Folks who are listening, please type your questions in the chat feature on the right-hand side of the screen. I want to remind you, I know a lot of you have heard this before, but really no question is too basic. We're all learning together. So I have a question here. Are you aware of any schools in Washington that currently implement your recommendations for retaining teachers of color?
Well, to be honest, I don't aware any Washington school district have been implementing this in terms of my policy, particularly the policy recommendations I've shared. However, I do see similar strategies being explored here in Washington as well. May not particularly about teachers of color, for example, like the community pipeline strategy in terms of partnership between university and local school districts. And as a matter of fact, in Washington College of Education here, we actually having this type of program. So I'm going to defer to our associate dean to share more about it if you are interested in hearing more.
Thank you. Here's another question. Were teachers of color more effective than white teachers?
I don't think my work is trying to advocate that at all. I feel that in terms of the policy move and the policy discussion about diversifying teaching workforce, is not rest on the concept that Black or teachers of color or Black teachers are more effective than white teachers or students of color, or Black teachers or teachers of color are equally effective, or like white teachers cannot be effective for Black students or students of color. Rather, I think what we are saying here, or the whole field advocating for diversifying teaching workforce, is from a demographic representation perspective. And so with that said, in terms of like a general clarification in terms of the rationale behind it, and I want to share another two observations from the data. First is Black teachers, just like white teachers, there are huge variation in terms of their effectiveness based on the state measure observational ratings and value-added scores. Therefore, I feel like we need to think about how to not just diversify teaching workforce, but also think about strategically recruit, retain particularly effective teachers in the teaching workforce. And the other observation that I'd like to share from the data is that while for the turnover patterns, Black teachers, just like white teachers in a lot of aspects, in terms of like, it's opposite to some of the public media portrayed sort of effective teachers are more likely to leave. Rather, effective teachers actually more likely to stay, no matter their school is really disadvantaged school or advantaged school. No matter for each type of while the school's condition and type of the kids they work with, effective teachers tend to stay rather than leave. Therefore, I think retain effective teachers almost if we're answering the question of retain effective teachers, almost the same question of thinking about how do we support and develop teachers and support them to become effective.
Thank you. Will you please say more about quality matching and strategic placement of teachers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I say quality matching, this is based on some labor economic term, but basically it describes the situation that an employee would more likely to stay and become more effective and derive more self-benefit out of this if they are effective on their job. And for the company or public organizations, they are more likely to retain this type of employee as well, because for them it increases the organizational productivity. So that kind of is so-called quality matching. And mismatching will be some of the individuals are not being productive and effective in certain institutions, but once they switch institutions, if the match occur, then they become more effective. So that is the so-called quality matching, and that is connected to my argument of strategically placement and staffing, because the teachers' effectiveness, although a lot of them can be portable, but teachers' effective and productivity may change due to change of the school context. And they may be effective working with one group of students, maybe even more effective working with the other group of students. Therefore, that's where what I'm thinking in terms of strategically staffing. The other aspects, when I think about strategic staffing, I'm more thinking about this low-cost interventions, such as some of my prior work about pairing teachers. And if you pair an effective teacher with relatively ineffective teachers, this is almost like you don't have to provide special investment in this particular intervention. However, by the end of the year, these low-performing teachers in this pair significantly increase her or his effectiveness due to the peer influence, peer learning, peer support. And so just thinking about how do we pair teachers, how do we make teaching assignments, and how do we place teachers in schools, this may really involve very little cost, but may actually generate a bigger impact.
Thank you. Are you aware of the Martinez Fellows and the work they do to support and retain teachers of color within Washington? And if so, how are the Martinez Fellows doing?
I actually attended one of their summer retreats last year. I think they are doing fantastic. And our associate dean can share more about it.
No, that's a marvelous program that we're very happy to be affiliated with.
And are you tracking their retention in the schools?
Currently, I haven't. We have been discussing about possible research partnership, and I think we are still in the conversation and haven't been able to keep track of them in terms of like really have concrete data to show.
Thank you. Did your research? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to add that the Washington context is a little bit different than the North Carolina context in just the ability of the availability of the data set.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to talk about this question, and then I'm going to take one more question, and we'll likely be done. Did your research indicate did your research indicate any school climate effects, things like colleague attitudes, racism, on retention for Black teachers?
No, I haven't looked at this at all, but this is a terrific question, and I think I don't know the degree to which North Carolina Working Conditions Survey allow me to explore this, but I can certainly go back to the data set and explore and see if I have additional school climate measures or other students' behavioral measures that I can draw on to address this question.
Thank you. This is a completely different question, but I'm still going to pose it. You may not have the answer, but I think it is an indicator that you've motivated and excited some of our listeners into teaching. I currently work at a high school, and I am interested in obtaining an emergency sub certification. I have never taught before. Is this the best route to going into a teaching experience?
This is a very good question. I would think that through this strategy, if you want to get your feet wet and start to explore this profession, and yes, I do think this is a viable option for you. On the other hand, if you decided to do this, and once you get on the job, you will see a lot of opportunity to that, or you may soon feel the desire to improve your practice and seek for other learning opportunities. So the point I want to make will be the pathway to enter teaching profession is to some degree important, but it's not that sort of determine your future career sort of pathway or how effective you may be on your job, but more sort of give you the necessary knowledge and skills to enter this profession. However, teaching is just like any other knowledge intense profession, so you have to keep learning.
I think this is going to be our last question. And it's a great way for us to end this discussion. Were there any measures of improved performance for Black students experiencing Black teachers?
There are actually quite extensive, high-quality literature on that. Okay. So we are just discussing, and our Deb actually have one of the reference in front of us, and she's going to share that very shortly. But in my discipline, there are a number of publications out there through rigorous peer review process and through sort of widely discussed not only in journals but also on public media, such as like the 74 million kids that outlets, as well as other outlets. I believe the New York Times publishes similar sort of research results about this as well. So if we have the demographic matching between Black teachers and Black students, and the researchers found that if there is such match, the students more likely to report comparing to like a Black students who have a Black teacher versus the Black students that have a white teacher. This is Black students more likely to report that Black teachers have a higher expectation on the students and more recognize this student's potential and aspiration, and also the Black teachers more likely to represent the students to gifted program, and it's also linked to higher test scores and even linked to higher graduation rate.
Thank you so much. You know, as an advocacy organization, having links to a couple of those studies and articles could be very helpful, not just to the League of Education Voters, but to our listeners here and others who look at our blog and our information. So if you'd be willing to share them with me or Eric, that would be fantastic, and we'll make sure people can get access to them because it could be a really effective tool for us. At this point, we are wrapping up this webinar. I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Sun and Dr. McCutchen, for your really excellent information today, and I can tell from the questions we were getting, people were really involved and wanted to know more. So thank you so much. I'm going to move on to our next webinar. Will be Tuesday, June 20th at 12:30. We will have Bobby Bridge talk about the Center for Children and Youth Justice. I want to thank you all again today for joining us. If you have any additional questions, remember you can ask me at Kelly@Education Voters or send them to info@educationvoters.org. A recording of today's presentation will be made available on our website. Please feel free to share it with your friends and colleagues. Thank you again for attending. We hope to see you again. Bye-bye.